So imagine you've got this room, right? And inside, there are 4 professional human transcribers.
Okay.
They're sitting at their desks, and they are listening to this incredibly chaotic, just messy recording of a conversation. I mean, people are talking over each other, coughing, trailing off.
Transcriber's nightmare, basically.
Exactly. Total nightmare. And these transcribers are just typing as fast as they can, pooling all their expertise together to get, every single word down perfectly. Now imagine a single machine processing that exact same audio and beating all 4 of them combined.
Yeah, that's wild.
Right. And the crazy thing is, that happened. In 2017, Microsoft hit this milestone that just completely shattered our expectations of what machines can do. They achieved something called human parity in conversational speech recognition, which means the machine transcribed it just as well, if not better, than the humans.
And it was a massive, just a massive paradigm shift because, we spent decades treating computers like toddlers, just painstakingly trying to teach them the basic rules of vocabulary. And then suddenly, boom, they are outperforming a team of highly trained professionals.
It's bonkers.
Yeah.
So welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to, really map out this incredible arc for you, because we're going to look at the massive mountain of research detailing how we went from computers that could barely understand a single spoken digit in a completely silent room,
Right.
to machines that can literally read the neuromuscular signals of your unspoken thoughts.
Which still sounds like science fiction, honestly.
It really does. But we are pulling apart the algorithms, the history, and the high-stakes real-world applications of all this. But before we get into the timeline of how this actually happened, we really need to draw a very hard line in the sand between 2 concepts that people, they constantly mix up.
Oh, definitely.
And that is speech recognition versus voice recognition.
Yeah, they sound identical to most people, but functionally, they are worlds apart. Voice recognition is, it's entirely about who is speaking.
Right, like a security thing.
Exactly. It is a biometric security measure. So when you call your bank and the automated system asks you to, speak a phrase to verify your identity, it is actively analyzing the unique physical shape of your vocal cords, the resonance of your nasal cavity, your pitch.
So it's looking for my specific biological signature.
Precisely. It wants to know it's you.
Okay, whereas speech recognition, which is, our focus today, that doesn't care at all about who you are.
Not even a little bit.
Right. It is solely focused on what is being said, the automatic conversion of spoken language into text. So like if I say the word banana, or if a child says it, or if someone with a super thick accent says it, the system's only job is to just output the letters B-A-N-A-N-A.
Exactly. It basically strips away the identity of the speaker so it can just isolate the semantic content. And teaching a machine to isolate that content has been, honestly, one of the most agonizingly complex challenges in the history of computer science.
I bet. Which actually brings us back to the 1950s, because I was looking at the early research here, and I just have to wonder, how on earth did we teach a machine to hear words before we even had modern processors, let alone, cloud computing?
Well, to really appreciate that seamless voice assistant living inside your smartphone today, you have to understand the excruciatingly slow evolution of early speech tech.
Right.
We have to go back to 1952 at Bell Labs. They built this system called Audrey. And Audrey was the size of a massive filing cabinet.
Oh, wow.
Incredibly expensive, and her capability was almost comically limited. She could only recognize single digits from 0 to 9.
And even then, she only worked for the specific person who trained her, right? Like if I walked up and said the number 5, Audrey would have absolutely no idea what was going on.
She wouldn't, because the mechanism behind Audrey was purely physical, purely acoustic. The engineers were looking at the power spectrum of the voice. They were literally trying to match the physical shape of the sound waves.
Oh, I see.
But every single human being has a differently shaped vocal tract. So my sound wave for the number 5 looks physically, mathematically different than your sound wave for the number 5.
Which is just a terrible way to build a universal system.
Yeah, it's impossible to scale.
But they kept pushing.
Yeah.
Right. Because 10 years later, in 1962, IBM debuts a machine called the shoebox at the World's Fair.
Right, the famous shoebox.
Yeah, and it was considered this absolute marvel at the time, but it only had a 16-word vocabulary. And the catch with all these early systems, the thing that makes them sound so incredibly robotic in those old archival footage clips, is that they required users to awkwardly pause after
Okay.
every single word.
Yes, because the machine needed absolute silence to know where one word ended and the next one began.
Right.
Continuous human speech is basically just a long, uninterrupted stream of noise. Like, we don't actually put spaces between our words when we talk.
Just run everything together.
Exactly. And those early acoustic models just couldn't find the boundaries between words unless the human, artificially created a boundary with silence.
So by the 1970s, DARPA gets involved. They fund this 5-year project called Speech Understanding Research with a highly ambitious goal for that era, which was a minimum vocabulary of just 1,000 words.
Which was huge back then.
Huge, but to hit those kinds of numbers, trying to physically match sound waves like Audrey did, that just wasn't going to cut it.
No, the map had to completely change, and the real pivot happens in the 1980s. There's a team at IBM, led by a researcher named Fred Jelinek, and they completely abandoned the acoustic matching approach.
They just threw it out.
Completely threw it out. They stopped trying to emulate the human ear, and they stopped trying to teach the computer the grammatical rules of linguistics.
Yeah.
Instead, they pivot entirely to pure statistics. Specifically, they implement something called Hidden Markov Models, or HMMs.
Okay, let's unpack this. Hidden Markov Models. This sounds incredibly dense, but really, it's just about playing the odds, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
It's like trying to learn a language not by understanding the grammar or the emotion, but just by betting on which word is statistically most likely to come next, based on millions of previous conversations.
That is precisely what it is.
Mhm.
An HMM doesn't know what a verb or a noun is. It just doesn't care. It takes your continuous stream of speech and treats it as a stationary signal over very, very short timescales.
Meaning it assumes the sound isn't changing if you look at a small enough slice of time.
Yes, it chops your speech up into tiny 10-millisecond frames.
10 milliseconds, that's nothing.
Exactly. In a 10-millisecond window, your vocal cords literally haven't moved enough to change the sound. So the HMM looks at that tiny slice, and it uses probability to guess what basic sound, what phone is being made. Then it looks at the next 10-millisecond slice, and it strings those guesses together and says, statistically, an S sound followed by a T sound is highly likely to be the start of the word stop.
Oh, wow.
And what's fascinating here is that linguists absolutely hated this approach.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, the statistical model was highly controversial in the academic community because it completely ignored the actual, beautiful rules of human language. It was just a brute force mathematical bulldozer.
But the bulldozer worked. I mean, by the mid-'80s, this statistical pivot paved the way for IBM's Tangora, which was a voice-activated typewriter that could handle a 20,000-word vocabulary.
Which is an astronomical leap from the 16-word shoebox.
Right. But, as we know, probability works perfectly until humans get messy. So Hidden Markov models eventually hit a brick wall.
They did.
They're great for a quiet room where someone is speaking really clearly, but if you want a machine to handle natural, fast speech in, like a noisy coffee shop with different accents and people talking over each other, slicing audio into 10-millisecond frames just isn't enough.
No, because the machine needed something resembling memory. When you speak, the meaning of a word often depends entirely on the context of a word you said, like 15 seconds ago.
Right.
If I say, I saw the bat, am I talking about a baseball bat or the animal flying in a cave? The context determines it. And those older statistical systems suffered from something called the vanishing gradient problem.
Wait, vanishing gradient. Let me see if I can translate this. Is that basically like playing a massive game of telephone?
Oh, yeah. That's a good way to look at it.
Right, like by the time the message gets to the end of a long line of people, the original context is completely lost. So the gradient of information just vanishes.
That is a perfect analogy. As the neural network processes longer and longer sentences, the influence of the earlier words physically degrades in the math.
Wow.
The system literally forgets the beginning of your sentence before you even finish saying it.
That's a huge problem.
Which is why the 2010s sparked this total revolution. Researchers introduced deep neural networks, and specifically something called long short-term memory, or LSTM.
Long short-term memory, I mean, that sounds like an oxymoron.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
But it revolutionized everything. LSTMs are special neural networks designed with internal gates. And these gates decide what information is important enough to keep in memory and what can just be thrown away.
So they bypass the telephone game entirely?
Exactly. They can remember an important contextual word from thousands of tiny time steps ago, which allows the machine to finally hold on to a complete thought.
And this directly leads to the massive shift toward end-to-end learning, right? Like if you look at Google's listen, attend, and spell model, because before this, speech recognition systems were sort of like Frankenstein
Oh,
monsters.
totally. They were heavily segmented.
Yeah, you had an acoustic model built by one team, a pronunciation dictionary built by another team, and then a language model built by a third. They were incredibly clunky, but end-to-end learning just throws all of that in the trash.
It does.
A deep neural network just ingests the raw audio at one end and spits out the text at the other. It learns the entire internal process completely on its own.
Right. It builds its own sophisticated representations across multiple hidden layers of computation. So human engineers no longer have to manually design the rules.
That's
We just feed it mountains of raw data, and it finds the patterns by itself.
And because the system is just looking for patterns in data, it doesn't even need audio anymore.
Yes.
Which brings us to the research out of Oxford in 2016. They produced LipNet, which is an end-to-end lip-reading model, doesn't use microphones at all. It uses something called spatial-temporal convolutions to literally watch a video of a person's mouth and output the text.
Let's break down spatial-temporal really quick.
Yeah, please.
So spatial refers to the physical shape, the position of your lips, your teeth, and your tongue at a single frozen moment.
Okay.
Temporal refers to time, how those shapes transition from one frame to the next frame. So LipNet is essentially analyzing a high-speed flipbook of your mouth.
And it actually surpassed human-level performance in lip reading.
It did, yeah.
Which makes sense, because a professional human lip reader is guessing a lot of the time based on context. But the algorithm is catching micro-movements that our human eyes simply cannot process.
Exactly.
But honestly, LipNet feels tame compared to what came out of MIT's Media Lab in 2018.
Oh, alter ego.
Yes, a device called Alter Ego. This completely blew my mind. It reads neuromuscular signals when users subvocalize.
Right, and subvocalization is something we all do, actually.
We do.
Yeah. When you read a book silently to yourself, your brain is still sending these very faint electrical signals to your vocal cords, to your jaw, and to your tongue, telling them to form the words.
Even if I'm not making a sound.
Even then, you just stop short of actually opening your mouth and pushing air out.
Wait, so we went from a machine that needed me to painfully pause between words to a headset that reads the electrical pulses in my jaw when I just think about speaking.
Pretty much.
I mean, I don't make a sound, I don't open my mouth. That genuinely sounds like telepathy.
I completely understand why it feels like science fiction, but you have to strip away the mysticism of it. It's just pattern recognition at scale.
Right.
Whether the data is an acoustic sound wave, a video of lips moving, or an electrical impulse traveling down a facial nerve, it's all just raw data to a neural network. It simply maps the electrical pattern in your jaw to a specific word.
That is just incredible. But, you know, if we have a technology that is this powerful, a technology that can pull words out of thin air or like micro muscle twitches, we really have to look at why it's leaving the laboratory.
Absolutely.
Because this isn't just about making it easier to ask your kitchen smart speaker for the weather forecast. This tech is actively being deployed in some of the most high-stakes, high-stress environments on the planet right now.
The military integration is a perfect example of this. Modern fighter jets, like the Eurofighter Typhoon and the F-35 Lightning II, they have speech technology hardwired directly into the cockpit.
Which totally makes sense. I mean, a fighter pilot is flying at supersonic speeds, their hands are locked on the controls, their eyes are scanning for threats.
They can't be looking down at a screen.
Exactly. Voice commands allow them to assign targets, change radio frequencies, or switch radar modes without looking down or letting go of the stick. But the human body isn't actually meant to talk while pulling extreme G-forces.
No, it is not.
There is this incredible data from Swedish pilots flying the JAS-39 Gripen. They found that as soon as the pilots hit high G-loads, the voice recognition software just completely fell apart.
Because gravity physically alters the instrument of your voice. When you pull 6 or 7 Gs, the immense pressure compresses your chest cavity.
Wow.
Your breathing becomes really shallow and erratic. Your neck muscles strain to hold your head up, which physically changes the shape of your vocal cords.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, your voice goes up in pitch and becomes incredibly strained.
So the acoustic data totally changes.
Completely.
So to fix the word errors, the software developers literally had to put pilots in centrifuges, record them under immense physical strain, and actually build mathematical models of the pilot's compressed breathing just to feed it back into the neural network.
They essentially had to teach the machine what human physical suffering sounds like, just so it could filter it out.
That is such an intense application. But, the exact same underlying neural networks are doing something entirely different in healthcare. And everyone knows doctors use speech to text to dictate patient notes. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Right.
It's not just a tool for the doctors anymore. It is actively being used as therapy for the patients. Prolonged use of speech recognition software actually helps re-strengthen the short-term memory of patients who have suffered a stroke or patients recovering from brain AVMs.
And an AVM, or arteriovenous malformation, is a dangerous tangle of abnormal blood vessels connecting arteries and veins in the brain.
Right.
When those rupture, or when a stroke occurs, it often heavily damages the neural pathways responsible for language and memory.
So how does talking to a computer fix that? Because the cognitive mechanism here is fascinating. For a stroke survivor, the physical act of writing with a pen or typing on a keyboard requires a massive amount of mental energy.
Yes, it's exhausting.
They have to think about the word, translate it into physical hand movements, and execute it. And by the time they type the word, their short-term memory has literally forgotten the rest of the sentence. So speech recognition acts as a cognitive bypass.
It removes the physical friction. The patient simply speaks the thought, and the software instantly provides visual feedback on the screen.
Exactly. They see the word appear in real time. And that instant visual reinforcement strengthens the neural pathway in the brain. Think about that for a second. The software designed to write corporate memos is actually acting as a physical therapy machine for the human mind.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it fundamentally changes how we should view speech recognition.
Yeah.
It isn't just a convenience feature. It is a vital translation layer that removes the physical barriers between human intent and digital execution.
You see that translation layer so clearly in accessibility, too. For someone suffering from severe repetitive strain injury, typing is agonizing. Speech recognition gave them their careers back.
Absolutely.
It allows a blind user to completely navigate a complex operating system and provides real-time, instantaneous captions for the deaf and hard of hearing. It genuinely restores human autonomy.
It does. It really does. But, we do have to look at the other side of the coin here.
Oh.
For all this talk of human parity and restoring autonomy, we cannot pretend this technology is flawless. When we push it to its limits, the cracks in the architecture become very, very obvious.
Yeah, let's dig into those flaws. Because anyone who has ever tried to dictate a text message while driving knows it still hallucinates words all the time.
Oh, constantly.
The industry metric for this is the word error rate, or RER. And one of the most stubborn hurdles is something called the ESET problem.
Yes, the ESET.
Yeah.
This is a group of English letters that are acoustically almost identical. So that's B, C, D, E, G, P, T, V, Z.
They all rhyme.
Exactly. For an acoustic model, distinguishing between a B and a P is just an absolute nightmare.
Well, yeah, if you literally just mouth the letters P and B right now, your lips do the exact same physical movement.
Right.
You press your lips together and pop them open. The only difference is just this tiny flutter of your vocal cords and a slight burst of air. A microphone in a noisy room is totally going to miss that difference. In fact, getting the error rate down to 8% on the ESET is celebrated as a massive victory by engineers.
It's a huge win for them. And the ESET is just about recognizing single letters. The much larger failure happens with spontaneous speech.
Oh, yeah.
If you hand a human a script and tell them to read it clearly, the machine will transcribe it perfectly. But when we just talk casually to each other,
we are a mess.
We really are.
We stutter, we say, and constantly. We cough in the middle of a syllable, we start a sentence, completely change our minds halfway through, and pivot to a new topic without even taking a breath. We break every single rule of language constraints, and the neural networks struggle to predict what comes next when we don't even know what we're going to say next.
But, accuracy is really just a functional annoyance. There is a much darker side to this interface.
Yeah, the security side.
When a device is constantly listening to the environment, analyzing every single sound to see if it matches a wake word, it opens up some severe security vulnerabilities.
And this is the part of the research that is genuinely unsettling.
Yeah.
Because we all know the wake words, right? Alexa, hey Siri, and we've all seen the funny news stories where a commercial on the television says the wake word and suddenly 1,000 smart speakers in people's living rooms wake up and try to order paper towels.
Right.
But that is an accidental trigger. The intentional attacks are terrifying. Hackers have actually developed inaudible attacks.
Yes. These rely on ultrasonic frequencies, so sounds that are pitched so high they are entirely out of the range of human hearing.
But wait, how does a speaker hear a sound that I can't hear?
It comes down to the physical hardware inside the microphone itself. A microphone uses a tiny physical membrane to capture sound waves. Now, the human eardrum generally tops out at hearing frequencies around 20 kilohertz.
Okay.
But the physical membrane inside a standard smart speaker microphone that can vibrate at much higher frequencies, up to 25 or 30 kilohertz. It is basically a dog whistle.
So a hacker can blast a command at 25 kilohertz, and you, sitting right there in your living room, hear absolutely nothing.
Just total silence.
But the microphone membrane vibrates, the processor translates that vibration into an electrical signal, and the neural network decodes it as the command. Unlock the front door.
Exactly. And honestly, they don't even need a dog whistle. Researchers have proven they can take a normal pop song, add these microscopic, inaudible mathematical distortions to the audio file, and just play it.
And I wouldn't hear it.
You just hear the music. But hidden inside the noise floor of that track is a command telling your phone to initiate a wire transfer.
Wow. So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive talking about human parity, right? Microsoft proved a machine can theoretically transcribe a conversation better than 4 professionals. But if that exact same machine can be completely hijacked by a distorted pop song or manipulated by a silent dog whistle to unlock a house, does it really understand anything at all?
This raises an important question, and
Right.
it is really the crux of where the technology currently stands. We have to separate acoustic transcription from semantic understanding.
Right.
The deep neural network knows the exact mathematical shape of the sound wave. It maps the pattern flawlessly, but it lacks common sense.
Doesn't know context.
Exactly. When a human hears a TV commercial tell them to buy a product, they use contextual awareness to ignore it. When a human hears a high-frequency chirp, they know it isn't language. The machine doesn't know what language means. It just processes the math. It hears perfectly, but it comprehends nothing.
Which brings us to the end of just a wild journey today. We have traced this technology from its infancy, the 16-word IBM shoebox that forced us to speak like robots, through the incredibly controversial statistical bets of the 1980s that just ignored the rules of grammar entirely.
Right.
We unpacked how vanishing gradients forced the invention of deep neural networks with memory.
And we watched the technology leave the lab to assist fighter pilots pulling G-forces, to rebuild the neural pathways of stroke patients, and to give voice to those who lost theirs.
And we confronted the reality that the smart speakers sitting on our kitchen counters right now, for all their computational brilliance, are still vulnerable to invisible acoustic attacks.
Yeah, they really are.
It has completely changed the way we interface with the digital world. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it gave you a profound appreciation for the invisible layer of math and probability happening the next time you casually ask your phone to set a timer.
And before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought. I want to circle back to that MIT alter ego device we discussed. The one that bypasses sound entirely and reads the neuromuscular signals of your jaw when you subvocalize.
Oh, yeah, the mind reader.
Right. If this technology continues to evolve and we reach a point where we can seamlessly command the digital world just by thinking the words, what happens to the spoken word?
Wow.
If speaking out loud is no longer a requirement to interact with our technology or our environment, will our physical voices become obsolete, reserved entirely for intimate, human-to-human contact?
Man, that is something to really mull over the next time you find yourself talking out loud to a machine. Stay curious, keep exploring, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.